let's move on because we need to know where energy is going to be playing its role in all of this. And I hope we can go live now to Paris, to the International Energy Agency, to Fatih Birol, who joins us. He's the Executive Director of the IEA. Welcome, Fatih. Nice to see you again. I hope you can see me as well. Now, you've produced an extraordinarily important report, literally in the last few days, and I'm told you're going to be producing another one tomorrow, but you can't really talk about it. But how much impact is this kind of summary making? And what are the main points you need to make to talk about and to emphasize the speed at which there must be now in adapting energy and our consumption and our production? Given, as I said right at the beginning, about an hour ago, we've already had BP writing off $17.5 billion worth of assets. We've just had Shell writing off another $22.5 billion worth of assets, massive commitments written off. Where are you seeing things moving, but what's your warning?
Thank you very much, Nick, and great to see you again. This time, not in Davos, but also through this virtual way. Now, when we look at the 2008 financial crisis, we have seen that the year right after 2008 to 2009, we have seen a decline of emissions, global emissions. But 2010, with the economy starting to recover, there was a big rebound of emissions. 2010 emissions growth is up to now the highest jump in the history of the climate change. Now, we have seen this year, 2020, as IEA expects, a big decline in emissions. And if we do not take the right measures, next year and the year after, with the economic recovery, we may see emissions again to rebound. So, Nick, for me, the first job we have is to avoid the rebound of emissions. This is the number one job we have now in my view. And it is the reason we came up with a plan we call Sustainable Recovery Plan, how we can do three things simultaneously. Number one, the giving an additional boost to economic growth. Number two, creating jobs. And number three, avoiding the rebound of emissions. Focusing on the next 3 years, focusing on the recovery packages the governments are preparing now, what kind of energy policies need to be included in the hugely consequential recovery packages so that we can see an economic growth, we can see jobs created, but also we avoid the emissions rebounding and put them in a decline, focusing on the next 3 years. It is the whole purpose of the report we carried out with the IMF, in fact.
Yeah, and that's important because you say that if you do this, there'll be an increase globally of GDP by 1.1% in each of the next 3 years. But let me pick up, because you've gone straight to the issue which I've already highlighted in your document, a rebound in emissions as the global economy emerges from this crisis is very likely, quote, unless action is taken to place clean energy transitions at the heart of economic recovery. Now, what I'm going to ask you is this: how do you do that at pace? How do you do that at speed when actually there's a lot of public pressure just to provide jobs? So there's economic activity, an economic multiplier. How do you produce the energy and the momentum that is needed to do that very quickly?
Nick, it's a very good question. You cannot make the governments around the world move by sending tweets, writing letters, next time sending more angry tweets, more stronger letters. You have to prove them, in my view, that the energy decisions that you are proposing are at the same time also helping the economic growth and creating jobs, their main priorities in many countries now, and rightly so. So there are some energy policies which can help the economic growth, which can create jobs, but at the same time, avoid the rebound of the emissions. It is the reason we focus on certain energy policies, such as efficiency, renovation of the buildings. This is very important. Efficiency is a job machine, job creating machine. Second, acceleration of installation of renewable energies, especially solar power. And third, modernization of the electricity networks, electricity grids. These three are the cornerstones of helping us to avoid the rebound of the emissions, and at the same time supporting the economic growth and creating jobs.
But what I'm trying to get at is, and I have no problem with what you're saying, is that the urgency is there. It's very clear from this big report of yours from last week. But you know, the kind of things you're talking about take a significant time to get going. They can't be achieved at the speed that is necessary, given the urgency of what is now clear on the climate emergency.
Some of them are very quick to implement. For example, efficiency. For example, just give you from UK. Most of the buildings in the UK, in my view, not in my view, but based on our data, needs to fix the windows, which means efficiency improvement. If the government has a position to give an incentive to the owners of the buildings, if you improve the efficiency of your insulation of your windows, we are going to give you this much of encouragement. This would create jobs. This could reduce emissions. This can be very quickly done. You don't need to discover a new technology. These are all available technologies. You just need to put the right policies in place. Again, our attention is the next 3 years to avoid the rebound. And therefore, you don't need to discover new technologies just to enforce the right energy policies here. And it can be immediately done.
Yeah, give me other examples as well. I mean, not everyone can suddenly become a window fitter in this environment. It's got to be broader than that.
Insulation, heat pumps, insulation of the walls, heat pumps, the windows, or in the industrial sector, in the manufacturing sector, improvement of the engines. There are many efficiency improvements around our societies. And just to give you very roughly, one sterling invested in energy efficiency, 60% goes to labor. It's a labor intensive, and this is you will see, Nick, we will all see in the next months to come, the main topic we will talk worldwide will be employment. In fact, unemployment will be. And these are jobs machines. These are creating lots of jobs, efficiency work. And it has been done in the past. For example, Germany, after the unification, they made a major improvement in the buildings, and it created a lot of jobs. So did the United States some 10 years ago. This is a well-proven policy to create jobs, improve efficiency, and reduce emissions. And you don't need any technology to be discovered here.
Now, in the end, Fatih Birol, you're not a politician. You provide data, expert data and expert analysis, but you've got to deal with political realities. How you convince governments that actually there are votes in what you're saying. And if I look at some of the data here, increasing global GDP by 1.1%, energy-related CO2 emissions would be nearly 3.5 gigatons lower. Now, how do politicians transmit that and say, this is good for you? Don't just reject it. You've got to understand this is a profound change we're asking of you, and we're asking it of you very quickly.
Yes. So I normally talk with the energy ministers of the countries, but now I talk with the finance ministers as well, because the budget goes from the finance minister and you have to convince the finance minister. And we tell the finance minister is that even climate change is not a main concern for your country, for your government. You still have to push these energy policies to create jobs, to boost the economic growth. And Nick, I invited 40 ministers around the world, 40, to to discuss our recovery plan. And 9th of July, 40 ministers around the world, US, Canada, Europeans, Mr. Sharma from UK, Chinese, Indian, all of these ministers coming, 9th of July, discussing this, what the report you have, how we can have a sustainable recovery, but at the same time boost the economic growth and create jobs. We are very happy that all the major powers of the world will come to IEA Clean Energy Summit to discuss the point you made, how the policy makers need to implement those suggestions.
Well, we're talking about the UK particularly, and I have to ask you, as you mentioned, Alok Sharma, who's the minister, who's going to be attending virtually, presumably. What do you say to him after what you heard from the British Prime Minister yesterday? The message is, as he put out on his lectern, he said, build, build, build. And a relaxing of planning regulations. I'm talking about the United Kingdom, but that is not going in the same direction as you need, is it?
So I think build is a good motto, but it depends on what you build and how you build it. So if you build a sustainable way, there is no problem. And the way that building an efficiency, building a apartment, building a household in an efficient way is a very good way. We are not, as energy person, as the people who look after economy, we are not against building, but we want to build in a sustainable way. We want to build a sustainable energy future. So building is not a problem. The problem is, or the question is, how we build it and what we build. And if you build in an energy efficient way, it is just perfect. And one talking about build, Nick, what we need is building a bridge between the energy and climate communities. I think this is very much needed. And energy sector is responsible about 80% of the emissions. And energy is a very good thing for our lives. But how to use it in the right way is very important. And I hope that we all work together, including this forum that you are organizing, making use of all clean energy technologies without discriminating one or another. Renewables, energy efficiency, nuclear power, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen. We need all these technologies in order to build a better energy future.
Many will be stunned, I think, that you're saying we've got to build between the energy and climate communities. Certainly as an outside observer, I would have thought that was well underway. You're saying much more concerted work needs to be done there, Fatih.
Very much so. There's a lot of work to be done, to be very frank with you. In some corners think that energy is a troublemaker. Energy is not a troublemaker. Energy is making our lives much more comfortable, much more efficient, much more productive. Think about the last few months. In the absence of electricity, the entire system would have been paralyzed. In the absence of fuels, in the absence of trucks bringing food to markets, how could we survive? So energy is a good thing. Emissions are a bad thing. We shouldn't confuse these two things together. Important thing is to produce energy, use energy with the minimum emissions.
I'm intrigued by your quote, energy is a troublemaker, or that's the way it's seen. Are you seen as a troublemaker when you try and point that out, coming from the International Energy Agency?
So we are very happy that our sustainable recovery plan gets the endorsement by almost everybody around the world. We are so happy in a world which is very polarized for many reasons. And we are very happy that the many governments which have different views on energy and climate coming together under the umbrella of IEA on 9th of July, the US government, Canada, Brazil, European governments, China, India, Japan, Korea. And we hope to see that the IEA continues to be an enabler here. And we are very keen to lead the global clean energy transitions. We are an energy organization. We have a big responsibility on our shoulders because we know that the governments are going to make hugely consequential decisions in the next months to come so that they put the right energy policies in their decision-making process. We are very keen to make it happen.
Fatih, you've stimulated questions. Let me give you two or three of them. Nadia Schweimler from Zinteo. How long can we still afford to wait to scrap fossil fuel subsidies? Why is this effort still stalling? What is your data showing you?
Our data is showing us that this is a big headache. This is a headache for many, many reasons. One reason is those subsidies are going from the pockets of governments. And many governments, especially in Middle East, in Asia, in Africa, in these difficult days in their economy, are is facing a major challenge to afford those subsidies. This is number one. Number two, subsidies give an artificial lifeline to fossil fuels. This is second. And third, of course, as such, they are providing an artificial incentive to fossil fuels and make the life of the other technologies more difficult. It can be solar, it can be nuclear, it can be or efficiency, because they are becoming much cheaper. If something is cheap, we human beings tend to use it in a not in a careful way, whatever it is.
Are you seeing any change in attitudes among ministers and senior corporates, those who've invested in the legacy of fossil fuels? Are you seeing a massive change there? Are they moving, given that many of these assets are now being written off anyway by investors?
Fossil fuel consumption subsidies are being reduced because some governments are making use of the low energy prices now and reducing them. But as we speak now, the subsidies for fossil fuel consumption is 3 times higher than the subsidies given to renewable energy. So this is still very high as we speak now.
All right, a couple more questions in the time available. Christina Flexman from Newcastle University. How do you ensure international collaboration so that no countries are left behind in the green recovery? I think you've partially answered that with your referral to what you're doing on the 9th of July. Is there international collaboration? Because what we're seeing at the international level, at so many levels, is a kind of pulling apart of international agreements and international consensus here.
You are absolutely right, Nick. When we look at the geopolitical context today, when we look at the economy, even when we look at the responding to the pandemic, where the world needs to show a solidarity, we do not see a collaboration as much as it is desired. But I am very happy to see, as you mentioned, on 9th of July, making this international collaboration, bringing countries from South Africa to US, from Brazil to China, India. Hopefully, we are all aware that it is in everybody's interest, but really in everybody's interest to come together and pursue the right energy policies. It is very important that there is an international collaboration, because today, any country, no country is an energy island. It is China, US, Brazil, UK, no country is an energy island. There are lots of visible and invisible ties through technology, through emissions, through trade, through prices.
A question here from Ruwan Nishanta Gamaj, co-founder of Solutions for Climate Change. Can we rebound emissions in the next 3 years? In other words, is there a danger that emissions are going to simply spring back? And how do you stop that, if I understand that question correctly?
I think there is a very serious possibility that the emissions can rebound, and rebound very strongly with the economic recovery, if the governments do not take the right measures, especially in the recovery packages. If we are with the recovery packages, if we were to finance the wrong technologies, then we will see a very strong rebound of emissions once again.
And does that mean Paris is under? Does that mean the Paris Agreement, COP21, is under real threat at the moment?
Very much so, very much so. And we not only need to put the right energy policies for the next 3 years in the recovery packages, but also we need certain technologies to be mature enough to put the emissions, the structural decline, so that there is still an open door to reach net zero emission goals.
Final thought, if I may, Fatih. I'm going to quote Mark Carney, the UN Special Envoy for Climate Change and Finance, and the two are linked. So making one of your points very, very forcibly. I heard him say recently, COVID-19 is now our metaphor for achieving a lot on the climate change challenge and the energy challenge. COVID-19 has shaken the complacency of day-to-day politics and leadership. Why did many not take this much more seriously before on climate change and climate emergency and sustainability? But we're now in a better position than ever. Is he correct, or is he too optimistic?
I think this is a very nice way of thinking, but I believe of course, after COVID, the many people's lifestyles, how they interpret the world, their lives, we all reflected about many things. It must have changed many things in people's thinking. But to be very frank with you, Nick, in the absence of right, strong government policies, regulations, I do not expect that suddenly all of us in the world become good human beings, make the right decisions, go for cleaner, more sustainable choices. I, of course, trust human beings' morale, but I still believe there is a need for government policies, government regulation to put us on the right track. Government policies do matter. Of course, we need to have the companies and others to be on board. Having said that, one final point. I appreciate very much what Mark Carney and his colleagues are doing, especially in the context of the ESG. This is very good. The investors putting pressure on the companies, but that pressure, investor pressure, is mainly or almost exclusively on the publicly listed companies. And publicly listed companies, according to our analysis, only 25% of the emissions, 75% comes from companies which are not publicly listed, state companies, national companies of different countries. So while putting the pressure as investors, as the consumers on the public listed companies, it is good, but we shouldn't forget the entire picture. There are many other companies need a lot of attention from policymakers.
Fatih, thank you very much indeed. Let me urge people to read this new document. I've got it in black and white here to save ink. Sustainable Recovery Plan for the Energy Sector, just out. And I think, Fatih, you've got another report out tomorrow as well. But can I just emphasize, if I may, 5 takeaways that I'm taking away from here. Must build between energy and climate community. Much more work needs to be done there. Secondly, energy is seen as something of a troublemaker. Thirdly, fossil fuel subsidies, a very big headache. And finally, a very serious possibility of rebound. In other words, urgency is very much at the center of everything that you are saying from the International Energy Agency. Very good to see you again. Sorry about the small breakup. And we look forward to hearing that you are making significant progress from the ministers on the 9th of July. So many thanks indeed, Fatih, for joining us during the London Climate Action Week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Nick. Bye-bye.
So that's where we're going to pause for about an hour and 3/4. So you can do other things at the moment. Don't go away and go and sit in the sun, because there are actually opportunities here for you to visit the expo area, which is you'll find on the website. You can set up meetings with our partners and with each other. And because this is all about collaboration and the sharing of ideas for a green recovery. And do send us messages if suddenly you're getting a great idea. We can then come back to it when we start again at 1 o'clock London time, 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock. And we can maybe reflect a big moment when you've actually had a discussion which has led to some very big new idea which you'd like to share. So please do tell us about it. And please engage on socials on hashtag CIF UK or at Climate Action. The afternoon session we're coming back to at 1 o'clock London time, chaired by John Elkington, who's the author of the great book Green Swans from Volans. We'll have Sir John Armitt, who's the chair of the UK National Infrastructure Commission. Simon Rossi, who's the Chief Executive of EDF, one of the sponsors today, and Nicholas Beattie, Founder Director of Zenobi. So please do come back, enjoy the break. We're not going to give you wall-to-wall transmission from here, and I hope to see you back then. Stay with us, even if you're disappearing for about an hour and a half. Bye-bye.